Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. And as if we didn't already hate the Baltimore Ravens, we got more reasons to hate them even more. We're taking a look at Steelers free agency, and we're taking a look at one former Steeler who he's made the rounds after making a lot of noise several years ago. You may remember the name Mike Wallace. And, you know, I'm not going to take anything away from Mike Wallace, and most of you know me on a personal level know that I'm fairly positive about any football player, really. I'm going to give everyone a benefit of the doubt, particularly guys who were contributors and helped the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Mike Wallace certainly did that during his time, but I also remember him holding out for a boatload of cash. That was a boatload of cash that he got from the Miami Dolphins. And what exactly did going to the Miami Dolphins do for Mike Wallace? Well, got him, I think, an 8-touchdown season and bounced him around over to Minnesota, and by way of Minnesota, on his way to Baltimore now. And man, does that not get under your skin as a Steelers fan that Mike Wallace is just... He went from being a guy who was beloved in Pittsburgh, top wide receiver. This was the go-to player, the deep threat, the guy scoring the touchdown, superstardom. And he goes from being that to crying that he wants money that I will say was better, well served and well spent on Antonio Brown, as we learned. And I called it back then. I wish I had a podcast and a website that I could go back to I wish I was doing it back then so I could show everybody that said, hey, you know what? I was on the Antonio Brown bandwagon back in 2011 and 2012, just like the Pittsburgh Steelers were, their front office and Kevin Colbert. And these guys went with Antonio Brown over Mike Wallace. And now we're looking at, could this bite the Steelers in the butt? Does it get under your skin any more than any other signing? Well, maybe not. And I'm going to get to that in a second, but I want to talk about, does Mike Wallace help the Baltimore Ravens? For those of you who are regular visitors of SteelCityUnderground.com and read my articles, you may have noticed the one I posted, I think it was about maybe July or August of last year, where I just got sick of the Baltimore Ravens playing this little game, I like to call it cheating, of where Joe Flacco throws up a jump ball, basically, to Torrey Smith or whoever he could heave the ball downfield to and pick up a flag. And if you read that article, you would know that this was a Baltimore Ravens tactic that landed them within the previous 5 seasons, not including last year, because last year was an abomination, but heading into last season, they had 5 years where they were the beneficiaries of pass interference calls, flags in their favor. So that means they were gaining yards for balls that weren't even caught. And this happened over a 5-year period that they were number 1 in the league twice in this category, number 2 in the league twice in this category. So 4 of the 5 years, they were first or second as the beneficiaries. And then that other year, they were third. They were 1, 2, and 3. In 5 years of getting calls in their favor. And let me tell you, Mike Wallace just reeks of that player that they're just going to tell him to run a go route, just run, you know what, to the wall, run into a wall, just go as fast as you can, run like Forrest Gump down the field. Our elite quarterback, Joe Flacco, will toss it up. And if there's some miraculous way that you might be able to catch the ball that you maybe hadn't forgotten how to do that since 2012, don't worry about it. The referees are going to throw a flag, and we're going to march 40 yards down the field, and this is how we win games. Boy, that's going to irritate some Ravens fans, but you know it's the truth because you didn't have that threat last year once Torrey Smith left. So this should get under some Steelers fans' skin. Just hope that Mike Wallace doesn't decide twice a year to have his game of the year and then phone it in the rest of the season. And I sure hope this puts an end to any fans that wanted to bring Mike Wallace back as a replacement for the Martavis Bryant situation, which I will address in another episode coming up this week. But speaking of Baltimore Ravens, is there somebody that you can maybe hate more than Mike Wallace as a free agent that just went to the Baltimore Ravens? I can think of one guy who just went there that I'm not thrilled about, but I said we weren't going to sign him. But of all of the places, I thought that safety Eric Weddle, free agent from the San Diego Chargers, one of their top defensive players, voted the San Diego Chargers Defensive Player of the Year, I believe 3 of the last 5 seasons. He wanted to go to a winning franchise. He wanted to know what it was like to win. He wanted a shot at a Super Bowl. He signed a contract with the Baltimore Ravens on Monday. Are you kidding me, Eric Weddle? I'm sure I'm not the only person who has asked that question. Are you kidding me? Here we are with one of the most sought-after free agents, and specifically so, free agent safeties on the market. Pro Bowler, albeit 31 years old, albeit having just made $10 million last season. And I thought, Pittsburgh, there's no way that Pittsburgh's going to pay this amount of money. Then you look at what Eric Weddle signed for over 4 years, and he's essentially taken a pay cut. He will make $9 million last season. He will make $13 million in his first 2 years in Baltimore. And this just reeks of show me the money now. Because after 2 seasons, Baltimore could cut him if they don't need him and he doesn't work out. And I think this is what he was trying to extort from the Steelers. Because he sure didn't go to Baltimore for a chance to win. He could have went anywhere else. Several teams that were looking at him, he was doing the LeBron James tour. If you remember LeBron James, I'm going to go visit with the New York Knicks. No, I know I'm going to go sign with Miami and make all of this money. And really, it wasn't even all about money except for money up front, money guaranteed, money right now because I'm 31 years old and I want to make sure I cash out in case I end up out of the league for some other reason. Smart move for Eric Weddle. Kind of a crappy move if you're anyone else that wanted him on your team because you kind of see what the player was about. Gives you a second reason to boo for the Baltimore Ravens. But we have maybe one other reason to cheer for free agency in the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were looking for a left tackle because Kelvin Beachum, coming back off an injury, not a certain thing, not a sure thing, also looking to get paid. And I think we got a guy for about half the price in current or former Denver Bronco and current world champion, Ryan Harris. He's a swing tackle who could play on either side, but started all the games for the Denver Broncos last season as their left tackle, as Peyton Manning's blind side protector, and to a lesser extent, Brock Osweiler. And you got to feel that for 2 seasons, just under $4 million, I believe it came in at $3.9 million. What a nice, I hate to say cheap, but bargain alternative to maybe he won't start. Maybe he'll compete to start. But he's going to be in that mix with Alejandro Villanueva to replace Kelvin Beachum. And should Marcus Gilbert falter, you have a guy that can play over on the right side. This is what the Steelers have been missing. This is the role that Mike Adams was unable to fulfill when Mike Adams was available to this team. And we got him for a bargain. You cannot complain about that, folks. And then we have the last bit of free agency news on the Steelers' home front. One that's maybe a little bittersweet that we're going to lose nose tackle and also able to play defensive end. But defensive tackle Steve McLendon has signed a deal with the New York Jets. the Steelers will lose at least one of their starters from last year's defense as McClendon leaves to go to New York, a team loaded with defensive linemen. But, again, football is business, and there are personal reasons, I'm sure, that Steve McClendon chose to move on to greener, Jets green pastures. And I'm not going to say it's really going to be greener because the Jets, they flubbed and faltered and lost to the Bills, enabling the Pittsburgh Steelers to make the playoffs last season. Steve, loved having you here. You were a solid player. You had to live in the shadow of Casey Hampton, who was always a perennial Pro Bowler, one of the all-time Steeler greats as a nose tackle. By no fault of yours, you were a solid, undrafted free agent that came into this team, made the roster, made the starts, and we wish you well with your future in New York. As for the other guys that I may have mentioned in this same podcast, like Mike Wallace and Eric Weddle, I don't wish them as well. In fact, I hope Pittsburgh just stomps all over the Baltimore Ravens this upcoming season. And I think it gives some more ammo, at least to the fans, at least to Steelers Nation, to boo the Baltimore Ravens.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.